Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Flight Lieutenant Sarashan Santhalingam. We warmly welcome the family of Private Alexander Frank Alexander and the families whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Greenway Park Public School, Carnes Hill. And from Victoria, Grace Christian College, Leneva and St Mary's School, Thornbury. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Students, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Alexander Frank Alexander. Alexander was born in August 1896 near Shepparton, Victoria, one of 16 children born to James and Mary Ann Alexander. He attended his local state school and later worked as a labourer. When the First World War began, he was living in Leeton, New South Wales with his widower father. Alexander enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 16th of March 1916 at Cootamundra and would eventually join the 36th Battalion of the 9th Brigade of the 3rd Australian Division. The 36th Battalion had been raised in February 1916 with most of the recruits enlisted from New South Wales rifle clubs as a result of the efforts of the New South Wales Minister for Public Information, Ambrose Carmichael. As a result of his recruitment drive, the 36th Battalion became known as Carmichael's 1000. In August 1916, Alexander departed on the 6-week long journey for Europe, aboard the troop ship Anchises. He was hospitalized almost immediately after his arrival in England with an illness that severely affected his wartime service. He was rendered unfit for duty 3 times with illness unrelated to battle during his service in the war. Alexander's service was also affected by a number of offences for insubordination and being absent without leave. While in England, he was sentenced 28 days detention on 3 separate occasions. In June 1917, he departed for mainland Europe and the Western Front, joining the 36th Battalion and Carmichael's 1000 in July. Throughout July, August, and September, Alexander experienced the hardships, drudgery, and horrors of trench warfare on the Western Front. His unit spent their time either resting and training behind the front line or manning the trenches and enduring intermittent German high-explosive artillery and gas shelling. On 23rd of July, the 36th Battalion successfully defended the front from a particularly heavy German artillery and infantry attack. On the 22nd of September, Alexander and his comrades were visited and inspected by Field Marshal Douglas Haig, commander of British forces in the First World War. The hardships of life as a soldier in the trenches of Western Front took their toll on many soldiers. In September 1917, Alexander was reported as absent from his unit and he was arrested by military police 6 weeks later. Military authorities returned him to the 36th Battalion, where he faced a court-martial on charges of desertion and being absent without leave. He was cleared of the charge of desertion, but was sentenced for his absenteeism to 2 years hard labour. He spent nearly 4 months in a military prison in Belgium before the authorities suspended his sentence and allowed him to return to the front, this time to the Somme region of northern France. He rejoined Carmichael's 1000, but 6 days later transferred to the 34th Battalion, also part of the 9th Brigade. On the 5th of May 1918, just a week after joining his new unit, Alexander took part in a successful attack on German trenches in the Bray-sur-Somme and Corby sector of the front near Amiens. Battalion successfully captured a number of German trenches and significant numbers of German prisoners of war and machine guns. The attack, however, attracted German counteraction in the form of heavy artillery shelling of the forward Australian position. During this artillery barrage, a large shell fragment struck Alexander in the hip and back. He was transferred to the nearby 11th Field Ambulance, but died of his wounds. He was 21 years old. He is buried in the Front VA, a communal cemetery extension in France, along with nearly 250 Commonwealth soldiers killed in the First World War. His grieving father left the following epitaph on his grave: "Life's labours nobly done." His is also the first name listed on the local war memorial of his adopted hometown of Leeton in Australia. Private Frank Alexander is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frank Alexander, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow old. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.